Let's begin with our prayer. If you'll join me. May the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, give us the spirit of wisdom and understanding as we continue this Bible study on wisdom literature. Open our hearts to the knowledge of Him. Open our eyes to the wisdom of Him. And may the words of wisdom that are revealed to us in the Holy Scripture enlighten us, that we may know what is the hope and glorious inheritance to which He has called us. Amen. Well, thank you all for coming. When you send out an email, you don't know. Well, I guess you can somehow figure out who got it, right? But anyhow, thank you all for coming. I have a question, and it's kind of a request. Father Tom sent me an article last night as I was watching the game and watching Purdue lose. I'm not put it here. Purdue. But it's such a good article on Sirach and Matthew, and I asked Tom if he would make a presentation on it, okay? But it might mean that we may need to run 15 minutes over. Is that going to be a problem? No. Everybody's okay with that? Okay. So that's what we'll plan to do. We should give microphones to somebody, because I'm going to ask some of you to do some reading. I'll start over here with you, Bob. We'll start over here. But I have a story. This is not a funny story. This is an Easter story. And we're in the Easter season, right? 50 days. And this is a story that was left over from my Holy Saturday sermon, because I didn't put it in there because I thought it would make it too long, because the Holy Saturday service is usually pretty long, right? But this is the story. A lady went to her priest to plan her funeral. And they sat down and she picked out all the readings, all the songs that she wanted to be sung. And then she said, I have one more request. And the priest said, well, what's that? She said, I'd like to be buried with a fork in my hand. With a fork in my hand. Yeah. She said, I'd like to be buried with a fork in my hand. And the priest said, it's an unusual request. I can grant it, but can you tell me why? And the lady said, well, it's like this. When I was a little girl, we would go with my grandma and grandpa to church. And then after church, we'd come home to their house. And we'd have, Grandma would serve a delicious fried chicken dinner with all the trimmings. And then as Grandma and Grandpa were picking up the plates, Grandma would say, keep your fork, the best is yet to come. And she'd serve the most delicious apple pie or cherry or blueberry pie. So I want to be buried with a fork in my hand because the best is yet to come. Isn't that a nice story? Yeah. I want to do a quick review before we start on Sirach, which is a wonderful book. I don't know why we're breaking up, Tom, but we are. I'd like to sort of review where we've been on this journey of wisdom literature. And we started out with Job, and if you don't agree with me on this, by all means speak up. But I see Job as a lesson in faith and suffering. Okay, and really the kind of faith that I know I wish I had, right? And then Proverbs, to me, was a father counseling his son. That was the narrative, that was the storyline. And then we were introduced to Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. And then there were one-line sayings of the wise. You know, like, what's the one saying? Haste makes waste. is those kinds of saying in Proverbs. One line, maybe two. Then Koheleth or Ecclesiastes, which I couldn't spell from memory, that to me comes across as everything is meaningless. There were some high points in Koheleth, but it is a wisdom book that probably can put you in the bad mood if you want to get there. And in Song of Songs, which we did a couple weeks ago, endless love. And we were introduced to the four types of love: eros, philia love, storge love, and then agape love. The love that Christ had for us, and that we as spouses should have for one another, right? And now Sirach today. Sirach, strong emphasis on fear of the Lord. We're going to see that when we read the first chapter in Sirach. And then we're introduced to divine wisdom. Wisdom that pre-existed before the creation of the world, before the Big Bang, if you will. Pre-existed with God the Father, God the Christ, and God the Holy Spirit. And then, which is different than the Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly that we saw in Proverbs. And then strong emphasis on Torah. And then long sayings of the wise. There isn't the one-liners like there was in Proverbs. Some of the sayings are a whole chapter. And so it's much longer. It's a beautiful book. And I hope that after this study you will pick it up and read it as much as you can. The Book of Sirach, sometimes it's called Ecclesiasticus, which means church book, because it was used extensively in the early church to teach catechumens, people who were being instructed in the faith. Sometimes called Ben Sirach, or the wisdom of the son of Sirach. The author, it's one of the only books in the Bible, or I shouldn't say one of the only books in the Old Testament, not the Bible, is, rather than saying Jesus, I'll say Jesus, because to distinguish between, his author is Jesus, son of Eleazar, son of Ben Sirach. And it's in Sirach 50:27. I'd just like to read that to you. Here's what it says, if you want to go to 50, verse 27.
Did you say 15 or 50?
50, 5-0.
5.
Yep. And here is what the author wrote. Wise instruction, appropriate proverbs. I have written in this book, I, Jesus, son of Eleazar, son of Sirach. So as they gushed forth from my heart's understanding. Now, Jesus had to have been a very, very well-educated sage, Hebrew sage, educated in Torah, educated in all of the covenants that God made with the Hebrew people. Because I don't really know how one person could have wrote this book. It's so filled with instruction, knowledge, advice, sometimes severe criticism too, which you'll see. Right? So that's why we know that it was who the author was, Jesus. Then what happened is it was translated into Greek by the grandson of Jesus, and that name is unknown. We don't know who that person was. It was not included in the biblical canon by Luther because it was not written in Hebrew, which is not true. Since the canon of the Bible was closed, there have been manuscripts that have been found for Sirach that are written in Hebrew. Some of them were in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there were some found in the city of Cairo. So it was written in Hebrew. Sorry about that, Luther, but maybe we should reopen the canon. I think it's a real tragedy that it's not included in all Bibles. Maybe you won't agree with me, but that's what I think. It's the largest of the wisdom books, 51 chapters written after the exile. Now, how do we know it was written after the exile? The exile was about 600 to 538 BC, and scholars are pinpointing the date for Sirach at 200 to 175. Now, there's another little tidbit in Sirach. If you go to Sirach chapter 49, okay, and it says, this is Jesus now writing after the exile, and on verse 4 of chapter 49, he makes a criticism. He says, except for David, Hezekiah, and Josiah, all were wicked. He's talking about the kings of Israel. That's a pretty strong accusation. Yeah, we're on. What's going on? Let my sound man. Now, what's interesting about that statement to me, and I don't know what it's about you, but one of the supposedly great kings was Solomon. And he doesn't get mentioned in verse 4, does he? No. Except for David, Hezekiah, and Josiah. Those were the only good kings in the author of Sirach's mind, all right? I suspect one of the things that maybe didn't get Solomon in there was he did bring pagan worship into the temple. And that was not a good thing to do. And King Hezekiah and Josiah tried to restore the temple to proper worship, right? Actually, Josiah found a scroll in the temple that gave all of the instructions and stuff for temple worship. And then he reinstituted that. So that's why he's considered a great king. Then you go on to the next verse, which is 11. Okay, and this is my book. My Bible says the heroes after the exile. So this is why we know that Sirach was written after the exile, when the Hebrew people were allowed to come back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple and rebuild Jerusalem. And Sirach is giving credit for that. He says, how can we fittingly praise Zerubbabel? If you can say that 3 times without getting mixed up. But Zerubbabel was the governor, okay, of Jerusalem. He says, who was like a signet ring on God's right hand. And Jeshua and Josadic's son, in their time, they built the house of God. They erected the holy temple, destined for everlasting glory. So he's giving these people credit for rebuilding the temple. Right? And then he goes on to say, extolled by the memory of Nehemiah, he rebuilt our ruined walls, restored our shattered defenses, and set up gates and bars. So Nehemiah, and there was also one other person, I don't know why Jesus doesn't mention him here, but Ezra also rebuilt the city of Jerusalem. And they did this after King Cyrus of Persia allowed the Hebrew people to come back into the promised land, essentially. Okay? So that's how we know that Sirach was written after the exile, because of what being said in these passages here. All right. Some of the book of Sirach is a reflection of the book of Proverbs. A lot of it is these sayings of the wise, but they're much longer. We're going to see that when we look at the text. It's a very reverential style. Fear of the Lord and obedience to divine law, the Torah, is what the emphasis is in Sirach. There is no storyline. There's no storyline like Job. There's no storyline like the father counseling his son in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs. So it makes it It's not a difficult book to read. I don't mean that because it doesn't have a storyline. It's a very wonderful book to read. It's the only book in the Bible to have a foreword. It was written by the grandson of Jesus, okay, who translated the book into Greek. And it's the only book that has a foreword. Some Bibles may not have that. All right? So we'll look at it here in a minute. But let me just go through the structure of the book, and then we'll get into the text. The first collection is Proverbs is from 3:1 to 23 to 27. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I hit on myself here. The first chapter builds a link between wisdom and fear of the Lord. We're going to read that chapter in just a little bit. Wisdom is personified as a woman, like it was in Proverbs. The words Lady Folly and Lady Wisdom don't show up, but clearly wisdom is personified as a woman. The first collection of Proverbs, Wives Saying of the Wise, starts at chapter 3 and goes through chapter 27. And then in the middle of this, there's a wisdom poem. Hopefully we can have time to read that. And then there's a second collection of Proverbs. And then there's this understanding the display of God's majesty within creation. It's not a poem, but it defines God's, just what it says, God's majesty in creation of the world, and also in that particular verses, it describes wisdom as pre-existing, just as God pre-existed before the creation of the world. So in Sirach, wisdom is considered to be more of a divine wisdom than it was in Proverbs. Okay? And then we looked at these, seeing the work of divine providence in the stories of Israel's leaders, praise of David, Hezekiah, and Josiah, we read that, praise of Zerubbabel and Nehemiah. And then it ends with an epilogue and some canticles, chapters 50 and 51. Okay? Now, somebody should have a microphone, so I don't do all the talking. Okay. I want you to, the major themes are the covenant, the 5 major covenants that God made with his people in the Old Testament. There are many other covenants that are referenced, but the 5 major ones are the ones that I'll focus on. And if we go to chapter 23, verse 23, would someone who can get to the Bible read that for me?
What's the verses in
23. Chapter 23, 23.
23 twice.
Yeah. You might want to use the microphone.
Absolutely. These pages in this Bible are very hard to separate.
Yes.
Yeah, I find that too. Do you want to read one verse, or how far are you going to go?
Just one verse.
Okay. Got to turn it on. Oh, is it on?
I think it should be on.
For first of all, she has disobeyed the law of the Most High. Second, she has committed an offense against her husband.
Okay.
Is that what?
That's good enough. This is an emphasis on the marriage covenant. You have disobeyed the law. The law meaning the Torah, the 10 Commandments, right? And what are in the 10 Commandments? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. So this statement says the covenant of marriage wasn't being kept. Now let's look at the covenant with Noah, 44, verse 18. Tom, why don't you just read that too?
44:18?
Yeah.
Okay. Everlasting covenants were made with him, that all flesh should never again be blotted out by a flood.
Did you hear what Tom read? Why don't you reread it?
Everlasting covenants were made with him, that all flesh should never again be blotted out by a flood.
Okay, this is a reference to the covenant of Noah, right?
Yes.
And what did God promise Noah? There would never be another flood to destroy all of mankind, right?
Yeah.
That covenant was invoked by Job when Job was suffering, right? That God would not rain down destruction on his people again. They were supposed to behave themselves. That was God's thinking, I guess, okay? Didn't happen like that, but that's what thinking. Let's look at the covenant with Abraham and Sarah, 44, verse 20. If you want to hand it to Mary, maybe Mary will read it.
He observed the precepts of the Most High and entered into an arrangement with him. In his own flesh he incised the ordinance, and when tested, he was found loyal.
Okay, that's reference to Abraham, right? What happened to Abraham? He had this covenant of faith. He promised that he would be faithful to the one true God, God of Yahweh. And the covenant was sealed with the sign of circumcision. And Abraham's faith was tested when he was told to go sacrifice Isaac. So that's another reference to covenant. Let's go now to the covenant with Moses, 24:23. Rena, can you read that?
It overflows.
Is it off?
It overflows like the Pishon with wisdom, and like the Tigris at the time of its first fruits. What verse?
Okay. 24:23. Is that? I don't have my Bible. It didn't sound like it was right.
Oh.
You
All
read
this is
24.
the book of the covenant of the Most High God, the law of Moses commanded us, and the inheritance for the congregations of Jacob.
Okay. The law of Moses. Okay, this is the Mosaic law, the Ten Commandments. When God made the covenant with Moses and gave him the Ten Commandments as a sign, and that was supposed to guide the Israelite people on their journey as they wandered in the desert. It helped them, but it didn't exactly make them pure. All right, and the last covenant is the covenant with David, chapter 47, 11. Yeah. 11 and then 44 and 25. But I think 11 is probably all we need. Yeah.
47:11.
Yes, 47:11.
Okay. The Lord forgave him his sins and exalted his strength forever. He conferred on him the rights of royalty and established his throne in Israel.
Okay, that's actually enough. This is the covenant that God makes with David, establishing Israel as a nation and saying that, promising David that there would always be someone from the line of David sitting on the throne of Israel. Obviously, that covenant has been broken many times. Right? That was the covenant that God made with David. Any questions?
It's just Israel still is a nation.
Oh, of course, yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool that it started way back then.
It started way back then, yes. That was the covenant that God made with David, that Israel would be a nation. Right? I'm not sure that the prime ministers are all reflect from the line of David. Okay? The other thing that was important that was read there was David confessed to his sin. And that's what made David a great king in the eyes of the people. Kings usually don't say that they've done something wrong. It's usually the people who've done something wrong. Okay? But David recognized his sin, confessed to it, and that was what made the Israelite people consider him a great king. And he kept the nation together, okay? Unlike Solomon's son Rehoboam, who split the nation in two. Let's look at chapter 1. I want to read that, most of that, because it's really important. And it's good. Let me put it that way. So let's turn to chapter 1 of Sirach. We'll get there. Now, excuse me. My book I gotta find it. It's right after the Wisdom of Solomon. My book has a foreword where I'm not going to read it here, but I would encourage you to read it on your own. All right. This is a foreword that's written by the grandson of Jesus, the author of Sirach. And you can read that. Chapter 1, I want to start with that. And would like to read the whole thing because this sets the tone for the entire book. Fear of the Lord. And if you're counting, fear of the Lord will be mentioned 12 times in the first chapter. Okay? So Alice, can we start with you, and you read as much as you want and then hand the microphone off to someone else.
Sounds good.
Yep.
All wisdom comes from the Lord, and with him it remains forever. The sand of the seashore, the drops of the rain, the days of eternity, who can number these? Heaven's heights, earth's breadth, and the depths of the abyss. Who can explore these? Here you go.
So, wisdom was created before all other things, and prudent understanding from eternity.
Okay, stop there for a minute. Let's assume that the way the universe was created was the Big Bang, right? So if I would draw a circle on the board, call it the Big Bang, everything that exists before the Big Bang is pre-existent. God the Father, God the Son, God the Christ, God the Holy Spirit. These statements now are saying, first one says, all wisdom comes from the Lord, and with him it remains forever. But then it says, before all things else, wisdom was created. This is the divine nature of wisdom in Sirach. Wisdom was pre-existed just like God did, according to Sirach, or Jesus. Okay? Okay, let's continue.
The root of wisdom, to whom has it been revealed? Is subtleties, who knows them? There is but one who is wise, greatly to be feared, seated upon his throne, the Lord. It is he who created her. He saw her and took her measure. He poured her out upon all works, upon all the living, according to his gift.
Notice, wisdom is personified as a woman, just like it was in Proverbs. But we don't see the term Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly in Sirach. All right, let's continue. Verse 9.
Verse 9? Okay. She just read verse 9. Okay, sorry.
Did read 10.
Oh, 10? Okay, sorry.
Upon all the living, according to his gift, he lavished her upon those who love him. The fear of the Lord is glory and exultation, and gladness and a crown of rejoicing. The fear of the Lord delights the heart, and gives gladness and joy and long life. Those who fear the Lord will have a happy end. On the day of their death, they will be blessed. Continue.
Keep going.
To fear the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. She is created with the faithful in the womb. She made among human beings an eternal foundation, and among their descendants she will abide faithfully. To fear the Lord is fullness of wisdom. She inebriates mortals with her fruits. She fills their whole house with desirable goods, and their storehouses with her produce. The fear of the Lord is the crown of wisdom, making peace and perfect health.
Okay. Do you think fear of the Lord is important to the author of Sirach? What does it mean? Being afraid of God? No. Reverence, right? Reverential awe of God and His majesty, His power, His omniscience, His all-knowing. That's what fear of the Lord means. When I was growing up, I don't know if it was ever talked about in my Sunday school, but if I would have heard the words fear of the Lord, I would have thought, oh my gosh, I got to be afraid of God. Okay, He's going to come get me.
Yeah.
This is not what fear of the Lord means in Sirach, or for that matter, in any of the wisdom books, okay? And thank God it doesn't mean that, okay? But probably, I suspect, I might be wrong, I suspect that that's one of the reasons that the God of the Old Testament is sometimes considered to be a harsh, rash God, okay? And that we should fear Him, okay? Thank God. I think that image is going away. There was actually a bishop in the early church. Tom probably knows this better than I do. His name was Marcion, I think was the right name. And he actually taught that there were two gods, the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. And he said we should discard the God of the Old Testament because he's a mean, vengeful God. And he had a lot of followers in the early church. He actually had churches started and a lot of followers, and it took a while for the church to cleanse themselves of that heresy, if you will. All right, let's continue with, I think, verse 17. Let's start there.
Okay, here we go. 17. Knowledge and full understanding she showers down. She heightens the glory of those who possess her. The root of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Her branches are length of days. One cannot justify unjust anger. Anger plunges a man to his downfall. A patient man need stand firm, but for a time, and then contentment comes back to him. For a while he holds back his words, then the lips of many herald his wisdom. Among wisdom's treasures is the paragon of prudence, but fear of the Lord is an abomination to the sinner. If you desire wisdom, keep the commandments.
Okay, just stop there. Well, finish that sentence, I'm sorry.
Okay, and the Lord will bestow her upon you.
Okay. Uses the word commandments. Remember again, Sirach focuses on the Torah, the law, the commandments, the covenants. As I read that one about patient man needs to stand firm, I think they're talking to me. Because I'm sometimes not a patient man, all right? And you need to work on that. But are you noticing how the flow of this is going much different than Proverbs, where Proverbs is one line or two lines at the most?
Yeah.
This has more of a flow, all right? Praise of wisdom. We all seek wisdom. Let's continue with 24, verse 24, to the end. Isn't it?
I can't see very well. So.
Okay. He will hide his words until the right moment, and the lips of many will tell of his good sense. In the treasuries of wisdom are wise sayings, but godliness is an abomination to a sinner. If you desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord will supply it for you. For the fear of the Lord is wisdom and instruction, and he delights in his fidelity and meekness. Do not disobey the fear of the Lord. Do not approach him with a divided man. Be not a hypocrite in men's sight, and keep watch over your lips. Gosh, do not exalt yourself, lest you fall, and thus bring dishonor upon yourself. The Lord will reveal your secrets and cast you down in the midst of the congregation, because you did not come in the fear of the Lord, and your heart was full of deceit.
Okay, thank you. Chapter 1. I think you gathered it by now that fear of the Lord seems to be the focus. Actually, in my Bible, I count 12 times. Okay. Now, if we continue to read in chapter 2, there's some of the same thing, fear of the Lord. Actually, I think it ends up being about 20 some times that those words are used. But I want to go on to something else. Get this machine running again. Okay, we talking about fear of the Lord. Let's go to this is like I said, this is the major themes. Tom probably is going to touch on some of this in his presentation, but we'll look at this. Reflection of the Beatitudes. Chapter 2, 7, and 9. All right. Edna or Dave, you want to read that?
7 through 9.
Yeah, 7 through 9, and then 15 through 17.
You who fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, and turn not aside, lest you fall. You who fear the Lord, trust in him, and your reward will not fail. You who fear the Lord, hope for good things, for everlasting joy and mercy.
And then 15 to 17.
15. Those who fear the Lord will not disobey his words, and those who love him will keep his ways. Those who fear the Lord will seek his approval, and those who love him will be filled with the law. Those who fear the Lord will prepare their hearts and will humble themselves before him.
Okay, I think we get the idea. Where else have you heard similar words? I'll give you the answer. Matthew's Gospel, the Beatitudes, Matthew and Luke. Right? So it's obvious, and I know when Tom has his presentation, Matthew used a lot of Sirach as his guide when he wrote his Gospel. Right? All right, I want to skip some of these over because you can read these on your own, but I want to go to honor your parents. 3 verses 1 through 6. And this is what Sirach has to say about honoring your parents, which will be which commandment? Third? Fourth, isn't it? First 3 commandments deal with our relationship with God, right? Not take the name of God's name in vain, honor, whatever, okay. My mind went blank too, Tom. Bob, okay. But I think commandment number 4 is honor your father and mother, I think, right? Tom's shaking his head. So let's read that. And we're over at the table there. So Fred, I guess you're up.
Children, listen to me. Your father, act accordingly, that you may be safe. For the Lord sets a father in honor over his children, and confirms a mother authority over her sons. Those who honor their father atone for sins. They store riches who respect their mother. Those who honor their father will have joy in their own children, and when they pray, they are heard. Those who respect their father will live a long life. Those who obey the Lord honor their mother. Those who fear the Lord honor their father and serve their parents as masters. In word and deed honor your father, that all blessings may come to you A father's blessings gives a person firm roots, but a mother's curse uproots the growing plant. Do not glory in your father's disgrace, for this is no glory to you. A father's glory is glory also for oneself. They simply sin who demean their mother. My son, be steadfast in honoring your father. Do not grieve him as long as he lives. Even if his mind fails, be considerate of it. Do not revile him because you are in your prime. Kindness to a father will not be forgotten. It will serve a sin offering. It will take lasting root. In time of trouble, it will be recalled to your advantage, like warmth upon frost. It will melt away your sins. Those who neglect their father are like blasphemers. Those who provoke their mother are accused by their creator.
Okay.
Cursed.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Interesting words, right?
Yes.
How do you think we do in today's world?
It isn't easy.
Huh?
Not easy.
It's not?
My father was a hardcore alcoholic,
Ah,
and I, as a child, had to finally say to Mother, I won't go see him anymore.
yeah.
I had to. In order to not be abused.
I had a friend whose father was abusive. And he told me one time he would go to his mother's grave on Mother's Day and put flowers on her grave. But he said, when I go to my dad's grave on Father's Day, I'll stomp on the ground, okay, or I'll spit on the ground. That's what he said. Yeah. And I said, you got to get that anger out.
I was on Zoom talk with some friends every other week that are in California I've known for like 30 or 40 years, and they each have a child, a daughter, these are gals, my age-ish or younger, who's the cut them off. I mean, absolutely, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't know what, look back, I don't know what the reasons are, but it's heartbreaking. But it's not uncommon, I think it's becoming.
I have good memories of my father, but he had a temper. Unfortunately, I inherited part of that. But we talk about God's grace and mercy. God's grace is God's to give, and only God can give it. But God can also give us mercy. The way I heard it, God's grace is defined as God giving to us what we don't deserve to be given to us. And God's mercy is God not doing to us what we deserve to be done to us. This is a story about my father. When I was about, 10 years old, I got a BB gun. And we lived on a farm. And I went out and I plinked, tin cans and pop bottles and whatever else was out there. And then, for one day, for some stupid reason, I started shooting out the windows in our granary. There was no grain in the bins, okay? It was in summertime, so there was no grain. And I shot out every one. I'm going, it sounds kind of stupid. And then I started on the barn, but I quit. That night at supper, we called it supper, all right?
Yeah.
We're having supper. My brother's 8 years older than me, and my sister's 8 years younger than me. And my dad asked the question, does anybody know what happened to the windows in the granary? And I sat there and said, well, I can't blame it on my brother because he's older, he knows better, and my sister's too young to be able to be using a BB gun. And so I decided I would tell the truth, and I admitted to what I had done. And my dad said, because you told me the truth, I'm not going to punish you. But he said, don't ever do that again. That was my dad showing mercy to me, wasn't it? Not doing to me what I deserved to have done to me. It taught me a powerful, powerful lesson in honesty. I said to myself, always be honest, no matter how painful it is to tell what it is, to be honest. It was a powerful lesson. And coming from my dad, I expected a pretty good tongue lashing. He never did anything physical, okay? But I thought I was going to probably lose my BB gun for life, which I didn't. But anyhow, duties towards parents. Sirach is very strong in that, okay? Now let's, I'm going to skip some of these because I just ask that you read some of these on your own because we really don't have time to cover them all, but these are the themes that are in Sirach. We talked about honoring parents. Father's care of daughter. Let's look at that one. 42, 9 to 14. All right? 42, 9 to 14. I think the microphone is still over there. Yes. Patty, you have it. See, I remembered Patty's name. Last class we had, my mind went totally blank, and I couldn't remember her name. Okay. Tell me the verse again, because I forgot it.
9 to 14.
Of what chapter?
42.
42. Okay, we're skipping around. That's okay. All right, I got it.
A daughter is a treasure that keeps her father wakeful, and worry over her drives away sleep. Lest in her youth she remain unmarried, or when she is married, lest she be childless. While unmarried, lest she be defiled, or in her husband's house, lest she prove unfaithful, lest she become pregnant in her father's house, or be sterile in that of her husband. My son, keep a close watch on your daughter, lest she makes you a laughingstock for your enemies, a byword in the city and the assembly of the people, an object of derision in public gatherings. See that there is no lattice in her room, or spot that overlooks the approaches to the house. Do not let her reveal her beauty to any male, or spend her time with married women. For just as moths come from garments, so a woman's wickedness comes from a woman. Better a man's harshness than a woman's indulgence, a frightened daughter than any disgrace.
Okay, these are some harsh words, aren't they? But we have to remember this was a patriarchal culture, right? Much different than what we have today. So, for us, this sounds really harsh, okay? But for the author of Sirach writing at that time, he thought he was giving good advice to the parents of a daughter. You all have children?
Yeah.
Were any of you ever overprotective of any of your children? Yeah, especially that first one, right? That was one of the hardest things for us to learn as new parents. Not to be overly protective of our firstborn, but we were. And part of the reason was, this is kind of confession time, I guess, but we lost our first baby at stillborn. And then our second, Carmen, was born premature, and she really wasn't supposed to live, but she did. She's a miracle child. But we really, really overprotected her, because it was hard to get that first baby. And, things have turned out okay. We have a good relationship today and everything, but being overprotective was an issue with us. Not so much with the third child. That's a little different. Okay. Let's go on. And like I said, some of these are harsh words, okay? They're not necessarily great. Let's go on. Happy husband, worthy wife. You probably love this. 26, 1 through 4. 26, 17. Okay. Let me get there. 26, 1 through 4, and then 13 to 17. Who's got the microphone?
Happy the husband of a good wife. The number of his days will be doubled. A loyal wife brings joy to her husband, and he will finish his years in peace. A good wife is a generous gift bestowed upon him who fears the Lord. Whether rich or poor, his heart is content, a smile ever on his face.
Okay, those are pretty nice words, right? About a worthy wife. I would agree. Right? Nothing wrong there. Now let's go to 13.
A gracious wife delights her husband. Her thoughtfulness puts flesh on his bones. A silent wife is a gift from the Lord. Nothing is... Yes, I was no point.
Sirach, Jesus had a sense of humor, okay? Let's be honest, okay?
A silent wife is a gift from the Lord. Nothing is worth more than her self-discipline. A modest wife is a supreme blessing. No scales can weigh the worth of her chastity.
Okay. Pretty good, right?
Back in those days,
And, yeah, that,
well, and back in those days, women were not working and
right,
making part of the money to survive.
right.
They weren't working outside the home.
Okay, I missed that. Yeah. In our family, our life, my wife's and mine, she's the extrovert and I'm the introvert. And she just loves to talk to people. And sometimes we go to the grocery store or wherever we go, and for her it's a social visit. For me, it's let's get the groceries shopped and you go done, grocery shopping done, and go home, right? It's just the way she is. All right, so let's. What else do we want to talk? Okay, this I want to talk about. I think you'll like this. Sins of the flesh. Sirach calls it like it is. So be prepared, okay? 23:16 to 17. Is that right? 16 to 27, sorry. 23:16 to 27. And I know I'm skipping around here, but that's just the way it is. Okay. So let's talk about it. My heading on this says sins of the flesh. Is that what yours says?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see what Sirach has to say about sins of the flesh. Are we back here to this table? Here, I can do it. You're up, Bob.
This one. 23, 13, 17.
16.
Yep.
Sorry, 16.
16.
Verse 16. 23, verse 16. Sorry.
Two kinds of individuals multiply sins, and a third incurs wrath. Her passion, their blessing, blazes like a fire, will not be quenched till it became itself out. One who commits fornication with his near of kin will never cease until the fire burns him out. To a fornication, all bread is sweet. He will never weary until he dies.
I'm not sure on the right one. Maybe.
He is.
Is he? Okay, just his Bible, your translation is very different from mine.
Yeah.
Okay. You finished?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What did you take from that? First of all, what covenant is this violating? This person violating? Thou shalt not commit adultery. The marriage covenant, right? Marriage covenant was made with Adam and Eve made a marriage covenant. God blessed it. Okay. Yeah. And he's telling them, if you keep doing this, bad things are going to happen, right? Yes?
Just a quick question. Is that the rake to whom all bread is sweet? Is that where the term, if a man is a rake, you know, like a bad person? Has anyone ever heard that?
No.
He's such a rake.
R-A-K-E?
Yeah. No.
I don't think my Bible says that.
What verse is that?
17.
Oh, here we go.
17.
17.
This says fornicator here.
Okay.
So is that where that term, that saying came from? He's such a rake.
So,
Does that mean there was no marriage covenant there?
excuse me?
Does that mean that there was no marriage covenant?
Well, he's breaking the marriage covenant. You're breaking it. Yeah. That's a really good question. I didn't catch that. The rake, to whom all bread is sweet, and you said that your word is fornication. Yeah. That makes more sense. All right? Now, while we're on this, I want to go over to chapter 24, verse 18. Chapter 24, verse 18.
I don't have an 18.
24?
I have 24 verses 17 and 19, but no 18.
You don't? Well, Tom.
Chapter 24, verse 17. I bet it's just, sometimes these are numbered differently.
Yeah,
these things,
they are.
And they just have a problem.
Well, let's see if you have the same words. Mine says, "Come to me, all you that yearn for me, and be filled with my fruits."
Yeah, I've got that. But
Who is this referring to?
Can we do 17 first?
Oh, do 17. I don't care.
24:17. Like the vine, I bud forth delights, and my blossoms become glorious and abundant fruit. And then you read, "Come to me, you who desire me, and eat your fill of my fruits."
Where have we heard those words before? In the gospel, right? Jesus says those words, "Come to me, all you who labor, and I will give you rest." Okay. So, yeah. And I think we're going to hear more about the yoke thing when Tom makes his presentation, okay? But here's an example where the gospel writers knew about Sirach. They understood the words of Sirach. And some of those words get pulled into the gospel. And Matthew is one who is probably the strongest with respect to that. Okay. I want to make sure I give Tom enough time for his presentation.
It won't take long.
Oh, yeah, I will. Training of children. Let's just look at that for a minute. 31 through 13. See what Sirach says about training children and how that might relate to us today. 31 through 13. And Tom, you're up.
Chapter 31, verse 13.
Yep. Chapter 30, 1 through 13.
Oh, I see.
The training of children is what it says on my Bible, okay, as the heading. And, by the way, are all your Bibles set this way? Because all of mine have heading, like chapter 30 says the training of children, chapter 29 says loans, alms, and surety. Do all your Bibles have that kind of heading? Yours doesn't have it. Okay. That's really too bad. It really helps you understand what's being said. You know, and if you really want to study Sirach, you probably need to get a Bible that has those headings. Donna isn't here today. No, Rena, you have a separate book. It's called the Apocrypha, right? Just has, yeah. Where'd you get it from? Amazon. Where else? Good old Amazon. All right. Chapter 30 says the training of children. Let's see what Sirach says about that.
How many verses do you want? 30?
Oh, go to verse 10.
Oh, starting with 30?
Yeah.
He who loves his son will whip him often, so that he may rejoice at the way he turns out. He who disciplines his son will profit by him, and will boast of him among acquaintances. He who teaches his son will make his enemies envious, and will glory in him among his friends. When the father dies, he will not seem to be dead, for he has left behind him one like himself, whom in his life he looked upon with joy, and at death without grief. He has left behind him an avenger against his enemies, one to repay the kindness of his friends. Whoever spoils his son will bind up his wounds, and will suffer heartache at every cry. An unbroken horse turns out stubborn, and an unchecked son turns out headstrong. Pamper a child, and he will terrorize you. Play with him, and he will grieve you. Do not laugh with him, or you will have sorrow with him. And in the end, you will gnash your teeth.
Oh, mine says pamper your child on 9.
Pamper your child? That's what mine says.
Well, I read Pamper Your Child.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, on 9 it's Pamper Your Child.
Yeah, mine says pamper your child and he will be a terror for you. Indulge him and he will bring you grief. A lot of truth to that. Yes, Ben.
I'm finding this, except for when it talks about the wife, very modern. I mean, it could all be written about today.
It has some of that, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't have anything about Jesus and the resurrection, but it sort of says it all.
Yeah.
I like it.
Coming from you, that's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
Diana, by the way, Diana's in our Thursday morning Zoom discussion group, and she keeps me on my toes. I have to tell you, but I love her. Okay, Affiliate type love. Okay, right? No, we have a lot of good discussion, but yeah, this part of Sirach does really ring with me. Okay, we had 3 kids, and what's the old saying? Spare the rod and save the child, or something like that. Spoil the child. Save the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah, but when it's your own children that are raising the children, you gotta, at least in my case.
Yeah, well, that's where silence comes in. Yeah. Usually I say we don't have a vote, okay, when it comes to our kids and grandkids. But sometimes they come and ask us for advice, and then we can speak openly and freely, right? Yeah. But Sirach, I think, has some good things to say about training kids. Let's see what else we have here. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to skip over here, and I want to go to sickness and health. This is one of my favorite
Isn't it
chapters.
sickness and death?
I'm sorry, did I say health? Yeah. It's sickness and death, not sickness and health. This one, Sirach 38, is one of those chapters where I think the author got things mixed up a little bit, okay? But what I like about this particular chapter, and I'll give you a little history. I had to have surgery, and it was not a kind of surgery that I wanted to have. In fact, I told the surgeon when he described it to me, I'm not going to do it. Because it meant that I was going to lose the hearing in this ear because they had to cut the nerve to get at a tumor that was in my... Actually, pressing on my brainstem. But I didn't have any symptoms of it, other than I couldn't hear out of this ear very well. So after the surgeon described what he was going to do, I said, I'm not going to have the surgery because it's not bothering me. He says, well, you can do that, but if you don't have it taken out, it'll grow bigger and eventually you'll die. I said, what day would you like to do the surgery? But I was looking for something in the Bible that would really give me some comfort that those guys, those surgeons that were going to mess around with me and that part of my body knew what they were doing. And I stumbled across chapter 38 of Sirach. Right? We're not going to read the whole thing because what I did is I took out of it the verses that really talk to me, okay, because it is about sickness and dying. And I didn't want to be bothered by dying, all right? I wanted to get well again. So here's what I did. And you have it in your handout. I condensed it down to this, okay? And I truly believe that surgeons have a special gift from God. We have a surgeon in our audience this morning. I won't identify that person unless that person wants to speak up. But I truly believe they get their gifts from God. Here's what Sirach says, the verses that I took out of Sirach. Hold this position and honor, for they are essential to you, and it was God who established their profession. Okay? Pretty comforting words. From God, the doctor has wisdom. Their knowledge makes the doctor distinguished. God endows people with the knowledge to glorify in God's mighty works, through which the doctor eases pain and the druggist prepares medicines. Thus, God's creative work continues without end in its efficiency on the surface of the earth. My son and daughter, when you are ill, delay not, but pray to God who will heal you. Then give the doctor their place, for you need them too. There are times that give the doctor an advantage, and they beseech God that their diagnosis may be correct and their treatment bring about a cure. Sirach 38. What do you think?
Makes sense.
Right on. Yeah. I've had several surgeries in my life, and I've given my surgeons all a copy of this. Some of them, I don't think they knew what to do with it. Others were very pleased to read these words.
Sure.
Okay. By the way, the surgery I had turned out okay. I was very lucky. All right, I'm going to ask, because I want Tom to come up here now and do his thing. But read these, if you get time, read all of these, okay? Because there are a lot of really good knowledge here in Sirach. It's just a wonderful book. And then I would also encourage you, and we didn't get time to go through it today, read the wisdom poem up here. Wisdom dwells in Jerusalem and the Torah. It's not very long, 34 verses. It's very good. And then I would read Understanding the Display of God's Majesty Within Creation. There it talks about the pre-existent God and the divine wisdom. Okay, that wisdom is divine. So I would encourage you to read those things because they're very good. Here's what I'm going to ask Tom to do his thing. He sent me this email last night. It has to do with Matthew's Gospel and how it relates to Sirach. And I read it. It's just very powerful. So, Tom, you're up. I made copies of the article that I'll hand out to you now. And
well, it's a surprise for me to be speaking to you because I didn't know I was going to find this until last night, and then I sent it to Mike, and he gave me a big thumbs up, so I appreciate that, Mike. By the way, I want to say my favorite Bible translation is the New Revised Standard Version with concordance. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. And Father Colville recommended that book when he was here, and I got it. I had a different version, but the words in the NRSV to me are so much more contemporary and real, and that we could identify with than the words in some of the other translations. I remember one of them is something about that God will lavish His wisdom upon you, and it says lavish in the NRSV. It doesn't say that in the others. It's sort of a more antiquated word. I don't know what it is. But anyway, I'm a real dummy about Sirach, and I didn't know anything about it. It's a book in the Apocrypha, and didn't pay any attention to it. And if you're a brought-up Protestant, you tend to think, well, the Apocrypha is just a bunch of silly books that were written between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and Jesus never quoted anything from them, and nobody cares about them anymore. And that's not what everybody thinks, but that's what some think. And so I was surprised to read, this guy is Protestant, but he's a sort of a revolutionary Protestant, and he was reading about Sirach in his Bible, and he said that I am amazed at the connection between Sirach and Matthew, that how Matthew was impressed with things that Sirach said. I want to say, by the way, that the title I like to use for this book, Sirach, is not Sirach, but Jesus, son of Sirah. Oh, Ben Sirah, that's what it is. Jesus ben Sirah. Ben Sirah is Hebrew for son of Sirach. But the guy that wrote it was Jesus, and I like to me that makes more sense than just saying Sirach, which sounds like something you pour on your pancakes. So, and I also was impressed with the thing about dying with your fork in your hand, the story you told, because I had a picture when you said that of, I want to be buried with the fork in my hand, and come on, key lime pie. That's what I said. I like that better than apple pie. All right, so back to the story here. This guy was approaching the end of a 4-year project to translate the New Testament from Greek, and he saved the Gospel of Matthew for last. And then he noticed the connections with Sirach. And he said that while the other New Testament Gospels each included at least one of Jesus' teachings from Sirach, Matthew recorded 6 instances where our Lord used the book, several of which can only be found in Matthew's Gospel. And so I was looking at those. And let's see. Since you have a handout, you can look on wherever you found hypocrisy, treasure, and false teachers. Do you see that one? Okay. It says that Matthew, Mark, and Luke all included at least one of Jesus' teachings from Sirach about the link between forgiving others and asking God to forgive us. The familiar one is Matthew, for if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you don't forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Well, here's Sirach saying, forgive your neighbor the wrong he has done, and then your sins will be pardoned when you pray. Does anyone harbor anger against each other and expect healing from the Lord? If one has no mercy toward another like himself, can then he seek pardon for his own sins? You see the similarity there. Further down in the Matthew captures Jesus' use of Sirach 7. Do not repeat yourself in prayer. And then Matthew 6, when you pray, Jesus says, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Well, Sirach already said that. And then down at the prophecies, Jesus said, come to me, all you who will labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Well, the word yoke, I hadn't thought about the word yoke very much, but in internet, the guy has a picture of a yoke at the very beginning of his writing about this. And, it was agricultural in Jesus' time. It was big-time farming and things like that. Or a little, whatever they could do. And a yoke was something that you put 2 oxen, and a double thing, double rings, and you put the oxen in there on their necks. And if you were an ox, and you were yoked with another ox, you would have to work together, wouldn't you? You'd have to stay on the same path. One shouldn't try to get ahead of the other. And you would be really committed to that other ox. Well, this is what Jesus is saying, that to be committed, to be really committed to God, to Jesus. And there's a thing about, the next page, what I have. In Sirach 6, 24-28, put your feet, this is Sirach talking now, put your feet into her fetters and your neck into her collar. Now, fetters, anybody know what fetters are? We don't use that word very much today, do we? Chains. They go around your ankles. They're chains. Fetters are chains. Or if you talk about a fetter, that's one link. Okay. So it says, put your feet into her fetters and your neck into her collar. Why would you want to do that? Put your shoulder under her and carry her, and do not, it's talking about wisdom now, and do not be angry with her bonds. Come to her with all your soul, keep her ways with all your strength, search for her and seek her out, and she will become known to you. And when you become self-controlled, do not let her go, for in the end you will find her rest, and she will turn to you in gladness. And that gives me, I'm having a funny reaction here. I just about want to cry, because what that is the wisdom that God placed in us, which is His Spirit, wants to have a really close, committed relationship with us. And if we agree to that, we will have that kind of relationship all the time. Sometimes we'll forget about it, but we come back to it, and we will hear wisdom, the Spirit, speaking to us. And I like to say, it's prods and nudges. Sometimes it's very gentle. The Spirit tends to be gentle, but sometimes it's like kick butt. You need to do something different around here. And if we listen to that, then we understand, I think, what this passage is saying to us.
Can I just throw in?
Yeah.
When we are baptized, the words are, you are sealed with the Holy Spirit and marked as Christ's own forever. That's when wisdom is put into us forever. So we have her in us. Wisdom is the Holy Spirit. We all have her in us. And I've had an amazing experience in the last couple of years. In fact, Tom and I were driving somewhere out of here, and I was just looking out the window, and all of a sudden, the word came to me, wisdom is the Holy Spirit, and she is in you, and she is there as your guide. And I started to cry, because I know it is true.
So Sirach says, put your feet into her fetters and your neck into her collar. Boy, that's close, isn't it? I mean, that's it's like, don't ever get away from that. And then it says, her yoke is a golden ornament. We don't usually think of yokes as golden ornaments, but in this case, that's what it is. And that changes everything. And then down to Sirach 6:28. Well, I already said that, yeah. Okay. For at last you will find the rest she gives, and she will be changed into joy for you. Then her feathers will become for you a strong defense, and her collar a glorious robe. Her yoke is a glorious ornament. And I think that's about all I have today, and I want to thank you for including me in this great presentation.
Again,
Thanks, Tom.
yeah, thank you, Tom, for doing this. I would encourage you to read this, because it's really filled with a lot of good information. Now, we got 5 minutes left. In your handout, very end of the handout, there should be a course evaluation. I ask you to fill it out. Be honest. Don't bring me to tears or anything like that. But I want to thank all of you for your continuing to come. All right, not falling by the wayside, and your attention to what I had to say. I hope that you have a better understanding and feel for wisdom literature in the Bible. It's not something that we see too often, although the Book of Sirach, if you follow the common lectionary, there's a lot of wisdom, or Sirach, that'll appear in the common lectionary. And one other point, in that article that Tom brought to my attention, it doesn't have the common English translation of the Bible as having the Apocrypha in it. But I looked it up this morning, and it does have it. So the Bible that the Episcopalians use as their, I guess, approved, if you will, or maybe favored text, does have the Apocrypha in it. In that article, it doesn't mention that. So, anyhow, you've been a great audience, and appreciate your time. Take care.
Could you mention to me this approved Bible by the Episcopal Church, so I know what the name is? Is it the one that he's mentioned? NRSV?
No, it's called a common, somebody help me out here, Tom. It's a common English version, is that it?
Well, the Episcopal Bibles, whatever they are, have the Apocrypha because they're part of the Orthodox tradition, Orthodox Catholic Episcopal. All have that in some form, or they should. So you don't have to go to the NRSV, I just prefer it. But it is another version.
And it does have that in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you have to ask for it because some come with and some come without.
Oh, really?
This does not have.
Or you can do like Rena did, go out on the Amazon and just order the Apocrypha. Yeah.
EFM, which a lot of the
So you don't have to actually buy another
education
Bible.
ministry, they use it.
They use that one.
This is the teaching
Rena's
Bible.
got a
That's what this is.
Yeah.
The New Oxford Annotated Bible.
Yes, Rena.
So if you read the daily office or many of the readings in the church, we're reading from Wisdom, we're reading from Ecclesiasticus, all of those are listed in the daily office. The Episcopal Church uses the Apocrypha all the time.
It does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think if you do that on a 3-year cycle, you've read about 90% of the Bible, which is pretty good, right? All right. Before you go, on this table, because there was some confusion, I have my handout on the resurrection, bearing the resurrections stories in the Bible, and on Holy Week.